This week, it's episode 300. It's not a perfect game, but still a reason to celebrate. Past and present hosts review the first 300 episodes. In segment 2, it's Ask Me Anything. Ask any of the hosts the questions you want answered, right here live on Business Security Weekly.
This is a Security Weekly production for security professionals by security professionals. Please visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to all the shows on our network. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where we explore the business of security to improve the security of business. Your trusted source for actionable insights on leadership, communication, and innovation. Get ready for Business Security Weekly.
Files are the lifeblood of business, and your employees will open the files they need to do their jobs, whether they're safe or not. With Votiro, your employees will only open files that are safe. Votiro applies zero trust principles to files and sanitizes every incoming file for your organization. Known and unknown threats are removed instantly, and the file retains full functionality, so your business is safe and productivity never slows down. And it's not just for email. The Votiro Cloud API works on web downloads, file uploads, cloud apps, FTP, and content collaboration portals. Learn more at securityweekly.com/Votiro.
Created in 2005 and hosted by security industry veterans, Paul's Security Weekly is your source for in-depth coverage of the latest vulnerabilities, exploits, and security research. Our weekly security news discussion dives deep into the security issues we face today and potential solutions in a fun and lively atmosphere. Each week, we bring on guests from the security community to learn about their journey and discuss topics relevant to their work and research. You can also subscribe to our show by visiting securityweekly.com/subscribe or look for Paul's Security Weekly in your favorite podcast catcher. We've recorded a ton of content over the years, so we created Spotify playlists featuring some of our favorite episodes, including interviews with Marcus Random, John McAfee, and Chris Roberts, to name a few. You can find them at securityweekly.com/starter packs.
Welcome to Business Security Weekly. This is episode number 300, recorded April 3rd, 2023. I am your host, Matt Alderman. I'm glad to host this session. We're bringing back all former co-hosts. So, joining remotely, first, Mr. Michael Santarcangelo. Michael, the original host for Business Security Weekly. Welcome.
Hey, man. It's good to see you, brother. You're looking good. Everybody's looking good. That's fantastic stuff.
Everybody's looking good. Also joining from the studio, Mr. Jason Albuquerque.
What's going on, Matt? Michael, great to see you again, my friend. Yeah, I had to come to the studio for 300, man. Come on. Had to celebrate with a cigar. Had to do it.
I was in Connecticut last week. I almost stayed over the weekend to do this in studio, but I have too much stuff with the house to do. My wife would have killed me.
Gotcha. Yeah, understood. Priorities, my friend.
Also joining, yes. Also joining for this segment, Mr. Ben Carr. Welcome back, Ben.
Hey, Matt, Jason, good to be here. Nice to be back on Business Security Weekly.
Yeah, good to see you again, my friend.
Thanks.
Also joining a couple co-hosts that fill in very often when we need the help. First, Mr. Tyler Robinson. Welcome, Tyler.
Thanks, Matt. It's good to be here, and got the OG, and we got Ben back. This is quite the crew you've assembled.
Yeah, I tried my best. And also joining us, Josh Marpet. Josh, welcome.
Thank you. Always a pleasure to be on BSW, and with this kind of crowd, man, you got to be here. Like, these are good people.
I tried to get Paul to come on too, since he and Michael started the show, but I think he's got other things.
Yeah,
so
Matt, just so you know, over the weekend, I tried really, really hard to bribe him. I was throwing out Davidoff Year of the Rabbit cigars. I was taking pictures, sending them over to him. Come on, man. Even this morning, the first thing I did once I got done working out was text Paul. Come on, man. You can do it. But
I'm disappointed. That's some pretty good. That's some pretty good collateral.
I know. I tried my best. Obviously, it's something important that he has going on. So,
yes. All right. One quick announcement, and then we'll get into it. As a member of the Security Weekly community, we are pleased to offer you 20% off your InfoSec World 2023 tickets. Join a community of over 2,000 security professionals and innovators at InfoSec World on September 25th through the 27th at Disney's Coronado Springs Resort. Experience world-class learning and networking through enlightening keynotes, informative panel discussions, interactive breakout sessions, hands-on workshops, and more. Register today at securityweekly.com/InfoSecWorld 2023 using our code ISW23-SecWeek20. All right, that's a mouthful. Gentlemen, so this is episode 300. And from my perspective, right, I came into this a little later, right? But I remember the day Paul called me up on the phone and said, I'm resigning from Tenable. Paul reported to me, he was on the competitive intelligence team. He did a ton of research on our web app scanner, container security, etc. And I knew this day was going to come in 2016. Like, I knew Paul was kind of like ready to kind of do his next thing. And I said, all right, Paul, what are you going to do? He goes, I'm going to expand the podcast. I'm like, all right, good luck, dude. Like, I wish you the best of luck, right? And then I don't know exactly, Michael, when he reached out to you to start Business Security Weekly. That's the piece I don't have. But I remember him leaving to start this conversation. Fill us in on the history. When did Paul reach out to you about this new endeavor?
I'm trying to remember some of the specifics because I had already been at that point. I'm trying to remember what episode, but I had gone on Paul's Security Weekly, and then I started kind of showing up as like a regular member of that cast, and I was interested in the startups. I've always been interested in that business side of stuff. So when it came up, I'd perk up, and we started talking about, hey, what if we did a program like that? And it's interesting. I don't remember why exactly, but I remember we had a really long, detailed discussion about it up in Rhode Island. So I had come up for something, to be in studio for some event or something, and we started talking about what would it look like, what could we do, and it started as Startup Security Weekly, and the idea was it's very similar to the way it evolved into Business Security Weekly. It was, can we go showcase some of the startups? There's people doing great stuff. Can we go tell their stories? And then what we realized was, but also there's a business element to it. Running a startup, even a security startup, is different than being in the trenches solving security problems. Oh, that's neat. Okay, let's go explore that. That's where it started.
Yeah, and what I like, what's interesting that most people don't remember, because we changed it to Business Security Weekly in 2018, but the first like 80 some episodes was Startup Security. You ran like 2 full years as Startup Security Weekly.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I think you're right. I think it was like 70-ish episodes, 70 or 80, somewhere in that range. And what we realized was we were still covering startups, but we were also talking a lot more about leadership and business acumen and the connection between it. And so we were kind of doing Business Security Weekly before it became that. But what we realized was, or at least what we considered was, a lot of people would send us notes and say, hey, I happened to catch that show. I really liked it. I thought all you guys did was talk about startups. And so what we started realizing was that startups are part of a business ecosystem. And it's sort of the same thing that I think we're all still chasing today. There's a need for security to have better business acumen. There's a need for business to learn more about security. Gosh, let's go at it. Let's go put those two things together. So those conversations were around, should we change the name? And if we change the name, does it benefit us better? And I think it did.
I agree. I think it was the right move, right? I mean, I didn't come on until episode 105. You guys ran it for 20.
We didn't have you as a guest before that. We must have had you as a guest.
Yeah, I think I was a guest on Business Security Weekly. I'm pretty sure I was a guest before I took over, as kind of the main host for the show. That's when I came over to be the CEO at Security Weekly in 2018. But yeah, I think I came on the show maybe once or twice because we were talking startups. Remember, Michael? I mean, in the early days, I'd come in and kind of give a breakdown of funding rounds and raises and those sorts of things because we were going through that at Layered Insight and others back then.
Yeah, it was great. Yeah, your experience really showed through, and it was. I know I always look forward to those episodes because it was like, all right, let's get into it. Plus, you have a really solid marketing background, so like we could really help people understand how it worked, what it was like, things to look for, and you had that practical experience to bring to the table too. So it was great. All of it was great.
One thing that, go ahead.
No, I think this was a missing conversation in a lot of security circles, right? We have great security practitioners. We have great leadership around security teams, but the articulation of the things that we're trying to talk to and the business side of integrating security from a technical standpoint to the business standpoint is almost purely what we've done between Jason, you, and the early kind of startups. Moving that discussion, I think, is one of the missing aspects that really makes security teams stand out. Bringing that culture, the leadership pieces, really understanding the communication pieces. Those are the missing things in good security programs that are failing. We're seeing that as a distinction for places that are doing this right. So I think that is definitely an important conversation, and that switch may have been something that has brought an immense value to the community over the years, just because it's not been a thing up until now.
No, dead on, Tyler. I mean, it's how to build the influence within the business, right? It's how to build the trust. It's how to build the relationships. That's where we were lacking. I mean, for so long, CEOs would look at security teams and be like, you're part of IT. You're part of the technical team. You don't have a seat at the table. You can't sit here and talk about EBITDA with me, with the CFO. You can't talk about revenue generation and margin, right? So, we're not going to be looking at the P&L together. And that's where the disconnect happened. And ultimately, once you do start having those meaningful conversations, you build trust, you build relationships, you show that you have the acumen. Now you gain the influence, because that foundation is the trust. They need to be able to trust you to put the business in your hands. That's ultimately how you build those relationships. And that's what successful security teams can do.
Well, what do we teach right now? What do we teach people that are looking to become CISOs, that are looking to become CIOs and eventually CEOs? Mm-hmm. We teach them to learn the business and learn to speak business speak. If you can't communicate properly, you literally can't get your message across.
Exactly.
I mean, good Lord, how many times do you say that on a weekly basis?
Yes, every week, pretty much, right?
Literally, literally.
Yeah, and I think that's the interesting format for the show. When a co-host or when a interview comes on, right? I do a prep call with every single interview that we do, and I explain the format. This is the only show we don't cover security news on. We talk leadership and communication. That's a unique part of this. And Michael, it started with you and Paul reviewing a lot of the business books in the early days, sharing your knowledge. And then we just continue that with different leadership and communications articles every week, so that CISOs are at the table having business conversations, because that's what the role has evolved into. And it all started way back then, but it's a very unique format. Like, to not talk the news is interesting some weeks, because there's really good security news to cover.
There's a whole show.
It's done expertly by some other folks, and right. Hats off to them for covering that fantastically.
Yeah, but that's part of the challenge, right? Like, it's your natural fallback to talk about those things, or to dive into the weeds of the details and the technology. And I think that's the struggle that, security leadership needs to be aware of, is that it's easy to fall into that trap, but you have to elevate yourself out of it. And you have to think about a more holistic approach to the discussion and how you gain relevance within the business.
Yeah, the other thing that really helped for me on the show side is the ability to bring Jason and Ben, who have been in the seat, right? To have practitioners, practicing CISOs in the chair. You guys really rounded out the show, I think, because you brought your practical experience to the table. Right now, I remember we interviewed you, I think 101 right before I took over, and then I think I interviewed you after that, Jason, before you became a standing co-host. But your expertise in sitting in the chair is just—it's another level of knowledge that most people don't get to ever know, because they've never been in that seat.
Yeah, no, man. I mean, it was number one. I'm thankful that yourself and Paul asked me to come on board, and number one, be part of an interview, right? Because I was part of 101, and it was because I was a practicing CISO for a $500 million IT services organization. So talk about the struggle, right? And you'd be surprised that within an IT services organization, it was still the same problem. They didn't understand that security could be strategic. So part of my first year was just building that trust and that relationship within the organization for us to be able to be successful. And then I came back for 107. And then ultimately in 2018, I think I did 31 or 32 episodes, because, Paul had reached out and said, hey, listen, we want you to come in. We want you to do more episodes with us. And I told him, I said, listen, with the job that I have, I can't do every week, but I'll do as many as I possibly can. I'll let you know ahead of time. And it became 30 plus episodes that year. And then the next year it was full bore, pretty much every episode. And yeah, here we are, right? The journey's been great, but you know, it's just fun to be able to share the successes, the struggles, you know, everything that a practicing CISO goes through. And when I think back, this community here at Security Weekly has really been part of the growth for me as a leader. I went from CISO to being a CIO in CISO because I refused to leave that title. When I got offered the CIO position, I said, I'll only take it if I continue to be CISO because I want to be a security-led CIO, right? I want that to be embedded in everything we do. I took that role. And then eventually to the chief operating officer of a technology services company. So, you know, this community has seen me kind of grow as a leader as well. And it's been great to be able to share my experience throughout that timeline.
Yeah. Ben, you brought similar background when we brought you in. I think it was like episode 231. You've only been doing this maybe a year and a half roughly with us. But I mean, I also interviewed you before you came on as a standing co-host.
Yeah, you interviewed me. I think twice, right? Stepped in for somebody, and then I think it was Equalis, and I had some conversations with you. I mean, it's been great to join the program. I'm looking forward to getting back into it now. You know, the timing was weird with COVID and everybody, you know, working from home and trying to figure out what the new normal looked like. But I think it's great to get in and be able to share experiences, kind of learn from everybody here, but also I think, you know, give back. Be able to articulate the problems that we have, the struggles that we see in the industry and in the role, and what we can do to hopefully lift everybody up. And, you know, I guess the core topic we've been talking about, make this a business focused role, right? And figure out how to pivot that. So, you know, as leadership continues to evolve, as these roles continue to evolve, we get a bigger seat at the table. We're thought of as more strategic, key to the business. I had a similar experience as Jason. I've been doing, you know, the security side. Last role, I was asked to step into, you know, take over CIO responsibility as well and privacy. And so making sure that, you know, I was thinking about everything we did from, you know, an IT perspective in a security context, but eye-opening to see some of the other sides of the conversation as well. So it's been great to participate, and yeah, I love being here and having the conversation. And I think this is really important to have these conversations and be able to give these thoughts out and share with the rest of the community.
Yeah, agreed. In 2020 was an interesting year with COVID, right? And it was an interesting time for Security Weekly, the podcast as a whole. I remember the discussions with Paul, like, what are we going to do? Like, how do we do this? And you know, we went full remote. I was already remote. And Johnny held down the fort for us. In studio, everybody just got patched in. Paul would come in his one night a week, typically do the show, and we trudged through that whole transition period. But we didn't miss a single episode during that entire time, and even set us up for an acquisition by CyberRisk Alliance later that year, that first year of COVID. I mean, we're 2 years plus out of it, and people are still struggling to kind of get back to some level of normalcy. At least we had this format that we could at least all get online virtually and still do the podcast live, which I thought was great.
I mean, I'll be honest with you, BSW was a saving grace for me to not just get cabin fever. In all honesty, it really was. I got to connect with folks that weren't part of my every single day for, you know, Teams meetings or Zooms or whatever that I see every day. It was my breakaway. It was my sanity. It really kept me from cabin fever. So thank you all, and thank the show. And yeah, it was a piece of sanity for me every week. It was great.
Well, there's a normalcy and a formality about it, right? I mean, while we have these conversations and they're pretty free flowing, there's still this, you know, hey, I got to get in, I got to do this. I have to be part of this, and I have to look presentable. And you know, it's not just getting on the phone with somebody. It was a little bit of normalcy in a weird time.
Yeah.
Yeah, although I have to tell you, I just went to Mid-Atlantic CCDC this past weekend, and it was a breath of fresh air to go to something like that. This was the first conference of sorts that I've been to since COVID started. I've been to some work things, but this is the first volunteer normal sort of conference for me. And it was fascinating how different it felt finally.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. Josh, I went to Secure World Boston, and
really?
I spent 2.5 days there, and the crap luck I got sick. I came home on Sunday. It was miserable. I actually had to take BSW on Monday off. The one time I'm like, I'm going to spend days at a conference and I'm going to hang out with people and I'm going to see people I haven't seen in a long time. And don't you know?
You got to build that immunity, Jason. You can't just hop back in.
Seriously, what the hell?
I swear it's now, it used to be just con crud. Now it's like con payment. You want to spend days at a conference? You're going to get sick.
Yep, totally.
It's
Yeah. So how many of us are going to RSA in a few weeks?
Not me.
Undetermined.
I think RSA is going to be another super spreader event. We'll see.
It has been for the last couple times it's been going on, so I expect it again. We've shifted up we've tried to add some episodes. I pulled a couple of the archives out, right? Mm-hmm. We did Security Money. Yep. First episode early 2019. It was episode 113. I thought it would be really cool, kind of along the lines of Startup Security Weekly, to track the security market. Tenable had gone public in late 2017. There was a lot of different companies going public and getting out there. And I said, well, what if I created a little index tracker? And then every quarter we cover it on the show so that we can kind of keep tabs of what's going on in the market. Like how's the pure plays doing? We've been doing that every single quarter since January of 2019. And it's been interesting, Jason, to look at kind of the ups and downs of the cybersecurity market.
I mean, it's been, I love it. I look forward to it every time I get the notice that, the next week is going to be Security Money. I absolutely look forward because it gets me out of my comfort zone, right? I'm so used to, being in the grind from technology services and IT services and cybersecurity services and, making sure that our company's operating and making sure that we're operating securely. And then it kind of just breaks me out. It makes me look at the cybersecurity market and really focus on it. So I love it. And it makes me do research. Like it just gets me out of my comfort zone. So I appreciate that every time Security Money comes on. And to be honest with you, it's been super helpful in some instances because you have companies being a service provider come to us for partnerships. And I'm like, wait a minute, we talked about them on Security Money. Hold on. Right. And I already had my research done on the financials of the company. So it's pretty cool. I love it.
In this age of consolidation and acquisition, it is really useful to know about that ahead of time.
Oh, big time. And I'll tell you, the last couple of years, it was on fire, man. Huh? I mean, one of the best interviews we had was with Robert Herjavec, and we talked about that, how the money train ended, right? And how now it's actually important to have cash flow in revenue streams and EBITDA, right? Now it's important. Otherwise, that PE money's not coming anymore.
Revenue.
That timing in history. Yeah, that timing in history was really fun to kind of watch and be a part of. And you could kind of see a lot of those shifts. We were talking about the different timings and what was happening in some of the smaller VC firms. And we even seen some of the signs with the economy, but actually being a part of that technology shift and seeing what could be the next 10 years of kind of how we've evolved and or I would say matured from a VC and startup side. Some of those lessons learned, that was really fun to kind of be on the sideline and be sideline quarterback, commenting some of that stuff. So.
Yeah, it's getting difficult to maintain just because there have been so many private equity firms buying out public companies. Thoma Bravo, for example, has been on this roll. Every time a company goes public, like a couple years later, they're pulling them out of the market. So it's hard to keep 25 pure play cybersecurity companies in the index.
That's the key,
I'm
Matt.
Keep doing
pure
it.
Play. We actually had that conversation on the last Security Money that maybe we need to get rid of pure play because there have been so many consolidations of non-pure play. Microsoft is the perfect example, right? So, Cisco too, right? So it's we may have to get rid of that in order to keep 25.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, because a couple are going to come out this next quarter. It's going to be rough. And then we added a new show earlier this year. We pre-recorded in studio at the end of last year. I loved it, Jason. We're going to do another one. Why don't you announce this one since I named it after you?
So for years on BSW, we've been talking about, the core pieces of strategy that cybersecurity teams need to be successful. And when we talk about it, it's not the shiny, sexy stuff, right? It's not, it's not the new technologies, it's not the blinky lights, it's the hard stuff. It's asset management, right? It's knowing, it's knowing the business and knowing the baselines of the business. It's the really hard work. So I always had this saying, say easy, do hard. This is something that is say easy, but do extremely hard. So Matt was like, let's do episodes on that. Let's maybe do a quarterly or a couple times a year. Let's do a say easy, do hard. And we had John Fredrickson in from Blue Cross Blue Shield of Rhode Island. And we talked about those really, really hard activities that cybersecurity leaders and security teams really need to think about in order to have that good core foundational security for the business. So it's something that's going to become a regular. I love it.
Yeah, you always said it. Mm-hmm. And I was like, wait a minute, we should actually do it for once.
Right.
If it's so hard to do, then let's do it. And let's pick topics that are not that easy to do and try to do them on the show. And minimum viable security was that first one. Well,
that's it.
I have some ideas for this next one, Jason.
Yeah,
so
I love it.
Let's see how that plays
it's great
out.
though, because it's, again, it's not the shiny, sexy stuff. It's the things that are really hard to do, but most of the time get swept under the rug, which is unfortunate, right? So, that's it's always been the mantra. Let's do the hard work. Let's build the foundation of a good cybersecurity program in order to build upon that. Because if the foundation is cracked and crumbling, you can't do anything. You can put all the blinky lights on top of it you want. It's not going to help.
From the pure play security programs on this network to the business security, we're all saying the same things. Mm-hmm. Do the foundational elements so that you can build an appropriate security apparatus, group, division, whatever you want to call it. And then you can put blinky lights on top to do fun things with data. But realistically, if you don't have things like asset inventory, change management, et cetera, which are boring as crap.
Oh, God, yeah.
But they're absolutely bloody necessary. Tyler, I think it was Tyler that said, and I still love this line, you should not depend on me, the pen tester, to do your asset management.
That's
or your
right.
asset inventory.
That's backwards. I love you, Tyler. That's backwards.
I'm an expensive asset management.
Seriously.
He said that. I love that line. We were talking about, who does your asset inventory? And Tyler goes, I can do it, but you don't want me to do it.
Exactly. Yeah.
But the business of security depends on doing these non-sexy things. Because if you don't, your business will crumble. Mm-hmm. And so it's very similar to just plain business. Accounting is boring as crap. But if you don't do it, you're screwed.
That's right. Your business fails. So
yeah,
that's the whole point of highlighting it, right? What are the things that are really hard to do that, get ignored on the daily, which presents an immense amount of risk to the business?
Maybe this is where we get creative and start to bring some of that hacker strategy to how do we make the fundamentals critical and fun and more easily implementable across the board for organizations. Like we know what the fundamentals are. We've all been taught. We have more resources than we know what to do with for these fundamentals. So how do we actually get people proactive in conducting and doing the right things continuously for the business sake, and having business programs and money and budget and resource behind this so that those things can get acquired? Or maybe that's some gamification. Maybe that's some interoperability between different verticals or companies so that you can have competitions or make it fun. I'm not sure. I think we've lost our ability to get cool and creative with things that are boring and nuanced, but those are the things that are getting left behind, and those are the things we really need to focus on. So finding ways to do that is
that's part of that, Tyler. The perception is that's not cool and that's not exciting, right? Like it's not just the external influences. I think some of that is how we internalize that and how we educate people who are coming up in cybersecurity, because the focus is, hey, I want to focus on this really cool EDR stuff. That's wonderful, but like if we don't have asset management, to your point, like how are we going to know where that asset that gets compromised is actually
How can you protect what you don't know you have, right? Exactly it, Ben.
The visibility is just the problem, but I think the core problem is it's hard getting new people in to want to focus on that because of by kind of the shiny ball, right? The cat chasing the shiny ball everywhere, the sexy stuff. and what is perceived as generating higher compensation, right? And so I think if you're not doing the foundational elements, how do you ever get to the sexy, cool, high dollar stuff?
And Ben, that's why so often, and you guys know my hiring style. It's more of that apprenticeship program, right? Shift hiring left, build the good strategy, build the good framework, build the good standard operating procedures, teach the folks coming in the core, teach them those fundamentals, teach them the hard. So that way, as they progress through their career, it's embedded in what they do, right? I mean, Tyler, you hit it on the head. I think you just got the tagline for Say Easy, Do Hard. Say easy, do hard. We're bringing sexy back. That's it, man. We're bringing sexy back.
I mean, that's been something we've been harping on for a while, right? Like we really do need to not have that kind of varsity football mentality around the red team and the offensive side. The red team and the offensive side should be adding value to your organization, and those are things that we've always sensationalized. I mean, they are the cool, sexy, fun things. Hackers are always the cool, fun things that get a action figure character or some cool name, right? But we really have lost our ability to make heroes out of the blue team and the people that are doing the hard work and are really the unsung heroes. So bringing that kind of that mentality of the cool kids to a sector that's not been given the heroicism that it deserves, I think is one of the foundational starting points. We need to bring a narrative that is different, where the red team is not the aspiration for all the people getting into cyber right now. The aspiration is to protect the networks, to build resilient systems, to get the fundamentals right and have a bulletproof network. Once we kind of change the morality, change the story of who the superstars are, and we get away from that kind of varsity football coach or varsity quarterback, I think then we start to build a next generation where that perception and that mindset has been changed, and that's how we start to change the fundamentals within inside of orgs and the culture.
Mm-hmm.
Tyler, I got to give you massive props for pushing. Tyler, I got to give you massive props for saying the unsung heroes, the blue team. I think that's incredibly good of you, and well done, sir. And I just want to point out one thing. I really don't want to say easy, do hard, bring sexy back. It's just phrasing, just wrong.
Yeah, I sing it in my head with the Justin Timberlake.
Me too. That's what I was doing too, man.
That's great.
We're doing it.
Ben, you had a comment in there. I want to let you get back in real fast.
I was just gonna say part of that's I just want to bring back to part of it's how we market it, right? I think I believe it was Patton. There's a scene, right, where the tanks are downrange and they run out of gas, right? Yeah, throwing lead with the tank is really cool and sexy, but if the guy doing logistics and getting the gas to the front lines doesn't work, tanks stop. It just doesn't. You can't roll forward with an offense if you don't have a great defense, right? Yeah. So logistical guys are just as important, and getting the right basics down. It's something we all have to figure out how to do.
Yeah, I love that analogy.
What do they say? What is it? Lieutenants think tactics, captains think strategy, colonels think strategy, and generals think in logistics.
Yeah, 100%.
Seriously, logistics is more important than the sexy, because without logistics,
once you've done this role, you see that when it comes down to budgets, right? I mean, having success and getting traction downrange with your program really rewards on the budget cycle. If you're not having success and you're not getting downrange with stuff, then you're not going to have a successful budget cycle. So I think that's something we have to build into people and encourage them to think about.
Yeah, and I love the military association, Ben, that you brought in, because I've said it on the show before. The Marine Corps strategy is, and you guys know I was in the Marine Corps, every Marine is a rifleman. Every Marine is a basic infantryman. We all go to infantry school, because at the end of the day, if we need to grab a rifle and hit the ground, no matter our MLS, no matter what job we're in, we need to be able to do that successfully. You have to have those core fundamentals. Same idea.
Oh, yeah. Jason, just one question. They issue the rifle and the crayons, right?
The crayons are for lunch. Just saying.
No, gotta get it right.
But in the economy that we're in, gentlemen, basics matter right now. Not only for securing your organization, but for surviving, which is why I think the show is set up perfectly for CISOs. Learn the business, align to the business, figure out what you can do to secure your organization as they struggle to survive. If you can get through this transition, you can get through pretty much anything. This is my fourth downturn. Not everybody's seen these downturns. And It's going to require us to get back to the basics, gentlemen, in order to survive. With that, let's wrap this segment. We're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to answer your questions live on the Ask Me Anything segment.